I think specifically the Treaty Principles Bill is one of the most dangerous bits of proposed legislation that has come up in my lifetime. I think it's really important that we act collectively against that bill to make sure it doesn't pass and go through select committee. I also think there's a push behind that bill for a referendum to redefine Te Tiriti or Waitangi, to erase Māori rights, to erase tino rangatiratanga. I think specifically Pākehā need to make sure that we're submitting on that bill, we're encouraging people to attend protests, that we make sure that bill doesn't pass, and also that we do what we can to make sure that there isn't another attempt to distort Te Tiriti after that bill fails, if it does fail.
We heard David Seymour at Waitangi say, tino rangatiratanga for all.
When we have tino rangatiratanga for all, mana for all, that is what I stand for.
I think it would be useful if David went and read the Māori text in the English translation. The tino rangatiratanga belongs with tangata whenua. We got granted kāwanatanga over the settlers here and the settlers yet to come. It's not a Pākehā concept.
Well, how representative do you think your views are?
The ACT Party got 8% at the last election. They're a small political force in this country. And I think the majority of people in New Zealand want to be talking about understanding Te Tiriti more, understanding what it requires and how we move forward in a unified way.
When you're talking about a small minority, is it really small or is it bigger than that?
I think it's small, and we've got polling that confirms that from the Human Rights Commission showing the vast majority of New Zealand think it's important to understand our history. The majority think Te Tiriti applies to everyone. That same polling the Human Rights Commission did said 32% of people haven't read one of the versions of Te Tiriti or the treaty. So there is, a third of New Zealand that probably wants to understand more. And I think part of the problem with the Treaty Principles Bill is it's also exploiting the limited understanding of that smaller group. And it's exploiting the fact that lots of governments haven't taught history in New Zealand schools, haven't taught Te Tiriti well. But I think we should be really careful about giving that group more oxygen or more power than their actual size.
So how can we have a really genuine discussion or debate that's been called for when it's quite prescribed?
I will participate in a debate about the principles of Te Tiriti, but I want to have a conversation about why 1040 in the Ngāpuhi report, Waitangi Tribunal report that said Ngāpuhi and therefore Māori never ceded sovereignty. That's the national conversation I want to be part of.
That's the elephant in the room, right?
That's the elephant in the room that we're not talking about, that we need to have the conversation about. I think it's a minority like Max too, but I think about people talk about the special privileges of Māori, and the last time I saw data from the Ministry of Health about how much money they spend on Māori health, that goes to Māori health providers from Vote Health, it was 1.91% of Vote Health goes to Māori health providers. That is not special treatment, that is institutional racism. That is disadvantaging the people that have the highest burden of disease.
Democracy, that word is often used to kind of justify what's going on.
Indigenous nations, once they become a minority in their own country, democracy becomes structural racism. And so it's the tyranny of the majority over the minority, and it's incredibly difficult to advance Indigenous aspirations in the context of a colonial country where the numbers have switched. So democracy does not work for everybody.
How do you respond to accusations that, you two are just part of the woke brigade?
I haven't come across anyone who's actually been able to explain what woke means, let alone the woke brigade. It seems like it means something like that you're sensitive to the people that you're living together with, or you're respectful. And I think people that want to stigmatise being respectful or decent are taking our society backwards. And I actually think most people in New Zealand do want to be respectful and decent and sensitive.
Some people are feeling very nervous, very afraid, like the country is divided. So how do you reach out to them?
Well, I think a lot of the fear is amongst Pākehā people. So I think it's up to Pākehā to continue to have courageous conversations with our families, with our workmates, with Bob the grocer, with Julie from down at the dairy and challenge misinformation when we see it.
How do you help people join the dots between these big discussions and what's going on in their lives?
You remind them that at the heart of Pākehā culture is a commitment to fair play, because I think that's common across many Pākehā that I know. And so you remind them of that, and you find the common ground, and you find a point where they recognise that there's a lack of fairness, and how can we get that back?
It's about appealing to values. So yeah, like Heather said, fairness, but also belonging. Like we all want to belong here. We belong here because of Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Values like community. Like we want to live in a solid community where people feel like they're treated fairly. And yeah, I think people can understand that, and that's the way to start a conversation.